Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that I'm really delighted to be here and to be able to interact with this wonderful group of people, students, researchers, scholars, and so on. I was very much delighted to see two of my students who graduated from our department here in this university. I'm going to talk about the Egyptian revolution, whether we call it revolution or not, but contrary to Palestine, we did have a spring in Egypt, but we don't see yet the blossom. It is not flourishing yet, and I'm not quite sure that whether we will see it soon or not. So let me try to explain exactly what happened in Egypt, and I'm going to try to focus on 4 points. The first one concerning the specificity of the Egyptian, or the so-called Egyptian revolution. Secondly, I will talk a little bit about the role of the military establishment in Egypt. Thirdly, I am going to talk about the transitional period, the way that the transitional period has been, the transitional era has been managed by the SCAF, the Military Council. And at the end, I will try to examine the ongoing challenges to see whether Egypt will be heading toward a real and working democracy or not. Well, concerning the specificity of the Egyptian revolution, I would say that you might consider that what happened in Egypt in the 25th of January 2011 was an uprising that was triggered by the youth in Egypt, but it soon turned to be a real popular revolution that was supported by almost the whole population. At some points, we were able to see almost from 15 to 20 million people in the streets of Egypt gathering, whether in Tahrir Square or the similar squares in all over the countries. So I will consider it as an uprising that has turned out to be a revolution, but it is an unfinished revolution, and I will come to that point later on. But the young generation who contributed who led the first move toward this revolution really belongs to the highest strata of the of the middle class in Egypt, the most and the well-educated people who really aspired for freedom, very much open to the external world, administrating the high technology and the ability to communicate with others, and so on. And those were really able to understand the impossibility for the old regime to continue, and the target was to topple the regime and to try to establish a real functioning democracy. But alone, the young could not, and these young people do not belong at all to the already existing political party. They came out of different ideological horizons, and they were not part of the existing political parties. And I would say that immediately when the Egyptian people, or most of the Egyptian people, understood that this is really very serious and it is different in nature than the protest movement who has started earlier, 5 or 6 years before, they did understand that it is the proper moment to try to really go ahead to finish with the regime, and they were very successful to topple. I wouldn't say to topple the regime, but at least to deposit the president, but not until now be able to eliminate the whole regime. I would say, to finish with this first point, that we don't have to think that this uprising really started from vacuum, because already there have been a protest movement that has been going on for at least 7 or 8 years, which started by Kifaya, who it was really a bold movement that raised the slogan, enough to the president and enough with the succession scheme. لا للتمديد لا للتوريث in Arabic. And then it was joined by different kind of social protest movement that has been accumulating over time. So the environment was really paved for a real and big explosion. But this, what happened in Egypt and what we call the revolution, it was a revolution without a leader. It was a revolution without an institutional framework. It was even a revolution without a specific ideology or belonging to a specific ideology. So this could be seen as an asset, but also as a real problem that could not really have a guide to or a boussole to see where the Egyptian people will be heading. But we should say that the revolution is in work. It is not finished yet, and it is still very much alive. It has been successful to topple the head of the old regime, but it has not been able yet neither to eliminate the remnants of this old regime, nor to establish a kind of a new regime or a working democracy. But I would say, to end with this, that without the role of the military establishment, even the toppling of the president of the old regime himself was not possible. So I would say that the role of the army in the Egyptian revolution was crucial. So let us talk a little bit about this role, whether it was really a role to support the revolution, or it was motivated by other reasons. Let us say first of all that the revolution was protected by the army because the army refused to use violence against the protesters, but also because the military establishment did really pressure Mubarak to leave post when Mubarak was continued to be very much stubborn and did not want to leave. So by just refusing to shoot to the protesters and also pressuring the president to leave, the military has contributed very much to the success of even the partial success that has been achieved. But how we can explain that role? This role could be explained historically by the fact that the military establishment in Egypt, from the first beginning, from the first outset, and during Muhammad Ali, since its establishment was a patriotic or a nationalistic institution. Never in its history it was turned against, or it was used by the existing regime to fight the Egyptian people. at some points, the military establishment itself took the lead for the change. This happened at least twice. Once during Ahmad Arabi, just before the British occupation to Egypt in 1881, and again in the so-called 1952 revolution under Nasser. But also at the same time, we did witness the army asked to appease some social troubles. This happened twice also in 1977 with the so-called bread uprising or Intifadat al-Khubz, and again with the rights of some of the security forces in 86. And in both cases, the army refused to really shoot to the people and tried to impose its condition to try to control the street. So we have to understand that historically it is very difficult for any kind of regime to use the military establishment outright against the people or to shoot to the people. But we have also to understand the role of the army through the fact that the military establishment had some reservation, at least regarding what was going on in Egypt, regarding two things. First, regarding the succession scheme, and we can just talk in details here because it was very clear that the military establishment was against the but couldn't make a coup d'etat. I mean, the militaries remained loyal to the president himself, but were refusing to the Gamal Mubarak to take power. And also the military establishment was a little bit worried about the role played by the business community, specifically those who were surrounding Gamal Mubarak himself, because this group of people were perceived by most of the population as the most corrupt and very opportunistic kind of people. But I am one of those who really early wrote that being against the succession doesn't mean at all that supporting fully the revolution. And that's why those who have been counting too much on the military establishment to take power were surprised by the fact that they found the military establishment acted as a more rather as a continuation of the regime rather than an honest delegate of the revolution itself. And so let us move to understand that point. Let us move to the mistakes that were committed by the military establishment once they became to power and they asked to take power. But let us say, since I already mentioned that the Egyptian revolution was without leader, without an institutional framework, without ideology, and so on. So as a matter of fact, it was de facto nobody else could really rule the country rather than so the alternative, the only alternative possible was to hand the power over to the military establishment. And if you have seen this extraordinary scene in the Tahrir Square, seeing the childs, women, and so on grappling the tanks and kissing the soldiers, this gave the impression that this is a highly civilized nation and the army is a real protector to the. But that was here. I think the role of the military has finished because. And I do have first-hand information saying that the military establishment in Egypt was preparing itself to intervene once the ruling party declared Gamal Mubarak as candidate to the presidency, because they did expected that there will be some social unrest, and they will be asked certainly to intervene. So, but they expected that take place only by at the end of June 2011 or early in July. So when the revolution, when all this started in 25th, they took advantage and they said, well, maybe this is a chance to finish with the succession scheme and to. But the military establishment was ready and to reform the system, but not to go as far as changing the whole system. And that's why a gap between the aspiration of the people and what the military can deliver has been witnessed and gradually widening over time. The military establishment was ready to get rid of Mubarak and of Gamal Mubarak and some of the symbols, to make some cosmetic change, reform the system, but not to go as far as eradicating all the racines of the roots of the regime, or changing its domestic and international foreign policy. This was not at all in the agenda of the military, and that's why many mistakes has been committed. I can go very long to in the details of this, but let us mention very quickly that first of all the army did insist or refused, as a matter of fact, an advice that has been given by many Egyptian intellectuals, including Mohammed Hassan Nafaa, including myself and many others, to establish a so-called presidential council, headed by Al-Mushir Tantawi himself, but composed in majority with civilians. So the military establishment preferred to manage alone the transitional period. Secondly, they did the fatal mistake to start by having, first of all, to modify the constitution rather than to go for election to establish a constitutional committee to draft a new one, even without putting some standards on how to select the members of the committee. The third, we have noticed that all the key players in the government, starting by the prime minister up to the governors, were selected among those who had some kind of relationship with the old regime, rather than to strive to push toward linking with the young generation who did the revolution. So the military establishment was absolutely unable to look outside the box in a way. But in the same time, during the whole year, the military establishment failed to improve the standard of living of the people, so to fix the lower and the highest wages in Egypt, or to tackle the problem of social justice. But mainly they failed to really re-establish the security apparatus and to ensure the security of the people. So, and finally, because I don't have a lot of time to go into the details, they committed some violence against the protesters, and even some grave violation to human rights has been committed under them. So for all these mistakes, it became absolutely obvious for many many political movements, or especially the young generation, that the military establishment acted as if it is a continuation of the regime rather than as the delegate of the revolution itself. The second point, it appeared as more close to a certain political trend, I would say the Muslim Brothers in this case, rather than being a real neutral and being at an equal distance to the other political forces. But more grave was the impression that maybe the military wants to keep power and to stay in power and to make it as long as possible. That's why Egypt is now facing some very, very serious challenges. The first one is how to correct the big mistakes that has been committed during 1 year. It will not be easy for anyone, even for a very liberal president, a new president of Egypt, to really correct what has been committed. It will be very hard. The second challenge, I would say, how to choose between two options. Both of them are bad, as a matter of fact. Whether we have to go first for the presidential election, or before the constitution, or it is better to quickly establish the constitutional committee and draft in a very short time the constitution. The constitution in that case will not be thoroughly discussed by the whole population. And if we go for the presidential election before the constitution, that will create a lot of legal and constitutional problems that I am not really very much aware how we can resolve this kind of problem. But maybe more serious is the challenge concerning the role of the establishment in the post-revolutionary era. And I don't know, those who have been following what's going on in Egypt, remember the so-called Ali Silmi documents, and in this document the demands of the military has appeared very clearly. The military wanted to be responsible of the so-called constitutional legitimacy, which will allow the military establishment to intervene anytime they see it is important for them. And secondly, they don't want any civilian power to intervene in the internal affairs of the military, which means that the military has to offer the military budget to the parliament as one single figure, so it doesn't have to be discussed by them. There is no oversight or any inspection of and you know that the military in Egypt control almost 1/3 of the Egyptian economy, and this is very serious. So because I don't have really time to go into some of the details, I will conclude by saying that the coming presidential election will be very, very serious. And we do have 3 scenarios, as a matter of fact. The first one, that one of the 3 Islamist candidates will be elected as president of the republic. This might have some serious impact on the future of Egypt. The Muslim Brothers do not have an official candidate, but Abdel Menam Abdel Fattah was member of the Muslim Brothers. When he announced that he will be a candidate, he has been rejected and dismissed from the Muslim. So he's not anymore a member of the But some will perceive this as trying, as they don't trust very much whether it is playing around or not. But in any case, this is one of the most honest and most liberal men among the Muslim Brotherhood. But I am not quite sure that if he is elected, that will help the Islamic trend to evolve toward much more moderation, or it will cause some polarization between the Islamists or the non-Islamists. So it has some poor and against impact. The second option is the possibility that the military, the SCAF will strike a deal with the Muslim Brothers on what so-called murashah tawafuqi, or a presidential candidate that are elected by consensus. I mean, but in that case, the elected president, he will not be really elected, but because it will be the output of a deal which is will go against any democratic rule. But in the same time, the president or the president who will come out of a deal will have no real power, because the military establishment will rule from behind the scenes, which is also very dangerous for the democratic change in Egypt. And finally, and this is certainly the best alternative possible, that someone will step in, a real independent figure that has a good relation with the Islamic trend, but in the same time enjoy a status that will allow him to play a major role in establishing a democratic system that will be apt to bring all the factions together, including the Islamic trends, without giving the possibility to the Muslim Brothers to dominate the system itself. This will be the best alternative, but I am not quite sure that this will be the case. So a lot of challenges and a lot of problems are facing ahead, but what I can say that the Egyptian people will never go back to the status quo before the revolution. So it is an unfinished revolution, but it is continuing revolution. Thank you very much.